A lawsuit against Donald Trump for accepting a $400 million jet from Qatar, gold-plated walls, gold-plated beds. What would that lawsuit look like if a lawsuit was filed pursuant to the Constitution's emolument clause? Harry Litman and I are here to map it out for you using the case law that exists in this area that, not shockingly, Donald Trump was responsible for creating during his first term. And the past case law is not definitive, but we have the roadmap here that we want to lay out for you. So in thinking about what a lawsuit would look like against Trump for violations of the emolument clause, which essentially means accepting bribes from foreign countries, which is prohibited in the Constitution. First, let's look at the constitutional text. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8, which says no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of the Congress, accept of any present emolument, office, or title of any kind, whatever, from any king, prince, or foreign state. So taking a jet as a hand-me-down from the Emir of Qatar would clearly fall within the emoluments clause. So then the question is, who can sue for this? What does that look like? And then you have to get to the issue, which is the most important issue in a case like this, which is something called standing. And standing basically means, does a party have the right to sue? Have they actually experienced an injury that's cognizable such that they can bring their case to court? Now, during the first Trump term, there were a few emolument clause cases that were brought with varying degrees of success. There was one case called CREW, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, versus Trump. And they're a nonprofit government ethics watchdog groups and various other nonprofits. They basically filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump for what was going on with the Trump Hotel, where foreign governments would basically, this was like, compared to what Trump's doing now, this kind of felt like the peanuts that you get at the restaurant before even the appetizer. And right now, Donald Trump has fast forwarded the story to basically be, taking the entire restaurant at this point. But this was what they were focused on in the first Trump administration. Foreign countries buying inflated room prices at the Trump Hotel, and Trump Hotel selling this. The Trump administration argued there was no standing for these nonprofit groups, and that case actually ended up getting dismissed, and that there was a finding that there was no standing originally, but then the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit reversed, holding that the hospitality industry had standing based on a theory of competitive harm resulting from the alleged injury. And then eventually this case worked its way up to the Supreme Court, but it was found moot because Trump had lost. So you had the district court saying no standing, then you had the Court of Appeal saying standing, and then the Supreme Court not ruling on it. Similarly, you had this case called District of Columbia versus Trump, where states sued. District of Columbia and State of Maryland ended up suing. The court found that they did have standing to sue. The case worked its way up to the Supreme Court, but ultimately the Supreme Court found the issues to be moot, so there was no final ruling on it because Trump lost the election. And then you had a case called Blumenthal versus Trump, where members of Congress kind of individually filed a lawsuit. Trump moved to dismissed on the issue of standing. The district court ruled that plaintiffs had standing, reasoning that those members of Congress suffered an injury in fact. On appeal, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit reversed and said that there was no standing for members of Congress. And then ultimately the Supreme Court never reviewed it. So I think you break it down, Harry, right into those three categories, which is nonprofit associations that may potentially have an interest here. I guess in this case, maybe the aviation industry, would they bring a case, or some group like that? The states is probably your strongest argument here. State governments, do they have some sort of interest? DC, does Maryland, based on, I don't know, their relationships with Boeing, and is this impacting, I don't know, the way the planes are built in their states? They have to find a state maybe where there's a Boeing factory. I don't know. And then you have the issue of individual members of Congress. So take it from there, Harry. But I think that's how I'd frame this if I was giving advice to a client.
Right. And if you were, I would frame it first, just talking to everyone and to Midas listeners, as a two-part deal. One, is there a constitutional violation? And you bet. It's so clear. As you said, he was a walking set of violations in Trump 1.0, shaking people down for more money for his hotels. Those were both the domestic and the international violations of the Emoluments Clause in the Constitution and equivalent law. That's chump change, as you say, compared to this palace in the sky. And just to cut to the chase, the Trump administration's already taken the position in a case involving others, actually involving Senator Menendez. Forget about it. Of course, this is a gift, prize, etc. Of course, he's an office holder. All of it, there's a total violation. Now, why are we even talking about standing is where I would then go next. Because the Constitution's really clear. You must have, maybe the most important words here, without the consent of Congress. And that's the whole point. Abe Lincoln wanted a tusk from the King of Siam. Congress said, I don't think so. Obama didn't take the $1 million for the Nobel Peace Prize. There's a judgment to be made here. Some gifts, no big deal. Some gifts, probably like a $400 million plane that then goes to the foundation of Trump after, a private entity, probably a big deal. And you already have Republicans, members of Congress, like Senator Cruz, saying, I don't know about the security implications here. For starters, what could be in this palace in the sky embedded in a way we can't get? But Qatar is right next to Saudi Arabia. All the kinds of implications of making nice. There is a reason, obviously, that Qatar wants to give us a $400 million plane. That's what matters. And what the constitutional scheme says plainly, what must happen now is for Congress to decide. Now, Congress doesn't even want to decide for political reasons. That should mean that there's no approval of the gift. Or if they do, because they're slavishly devoted to Donald Trump and they want to make a 50-50 vote that Vance breaks the tie of, okay, now they have political accountability. But that is the judgment that is embedded in the Constitution. Now, in the failure of that, which is what we see in other settings, yes, there will be lawsuits of all three of those kinds. And as you were explaining, and your listeners already know, people have to show that in some way their ox is being gored. The best arguments were made last time around by the state and the state attorneys general, who were saying, if you get this money, that means we get less revenue of that sort. Standing just requires some concrete economic injury. It doesn't have to be big. But that was where the real fight was. The biggest case was in the Fourth Circuit. It went en banc, 9-6. They held there was standing. Other courts held that there weren't. That is what the fight will be about now, but that's only because between Trump and the Congress, it's not operating the way it's supposed to, which is for the people's representative, not the people. You don't want to stop all of government and have the equivalent of a national election here. Same with suspension of habeas corpus. So everybody decides. You want Congress to make this judgment. Some gifts are okay. Is this one okay? This $400 million, or some have said $625 million palace in the sky? I don't think so, but it's for Congress to decide. And the reason we're talking about standing and other ways to do it is because Congress is not doing its job here. I mean, if you think about it, Ben, someone who makes a valid claim of standing, I'm going to lose $20 here. There's just no way around it. That's an injury. What would a court then do? I think what the court would then have to do is say, well, I'm looking at the Constitution. Congress has to decide. They're going to say, they have to say, there's no doubt this is an emolument. This is the kind of thing that just can't happen. It's a gift to the president. that just can't happen in the absence of approval from Congress. But there's that political process. And if you go back and read the framers and the Federalist Papers, they put it in purposely. It's the kind of thing that maybe it's okay, maybe it isn't. It's for them to decide. So that is the real problem here. In the absence of that, you're right, there will be different things fought. It may go up even to the Supreme Court, which dodged it last time, holding after Trump had left that it was moot. But even so, I think there's no getting around the determination. This is Congress's call to make. And what he's doing really that's so obnoxious or worse, kind of anti-constitutional, is trying to write Congress out of it. The exact same thing as is happening in the suspension clause, which is for Congress to determine. So there's always creative lawyering in the United States. Some of them maybe go through and then will give rise, as they did in Trump 1.0, to analyses of the substantive law under the emoluments clause. But I'm here to tell you, that's a short analysis. $400 million plane, Trump keeps it after. That's a damn emolument prize, et cetera, to an official. But now the question is, can he keep it? That is for Congress to decide. And if they don't, the actual legal answer is nobody should get it then. They have to consent. But the broader point is we have this political lockdown and partisanship where Congress does nothing and genuflects to Trump. And that might let something like this pass, even though it is clear as day, not just a gift, but a hugely valuable one. In fact, final point is Qatar has now said, we're not so sure ourselves. We're going to analyze the legality of this a little bit more. So it may just evaporate for that reason, even though Trump is making noises like his argument is, it's his constitutional argument. I was like, how can you be so stupid? What loser would not take a plane? Which tends to, I think, make the point that this is a valuable gift that Qatar is giving for some reason, and you need Congress's judgment about, do we want this indebtedness, there's no way around it, of getting this fabulous palace in the sky from a foreign country that is certainly in the middle of the war on terror, Middle East politics, et cetera, et cetera.
Your pronunciation of Qatar is actually how you see it. Your pronunciation is
I say Qatar. Is that wrong?
No. But it's like Qatar. Yeah. Qatar is wrong. Sometimes Qatar is right, but the way you say that Qatar, is anyway. I'm neither here nor there. And
is good, bad? No, I want to know. No, you're the authority.
I don't want to. I'm not really the authority on it, Okay. So it sounded good to me, but I don't want to.
All right.
I'm not going to come fully.
I looked it up. Earlier today before I talked to Molly John Fast.
When I try to be very sensitive to the pronunciations, but I oftentimes still get told that it's wrong. Look, this is wrong behavior. We shouldn't be taking hand-me-downs from Qatar. We should not. Like, if you're America first, you shouldn't even be thinking. It just makes you look weak. Why are you taking the Qatar airplane? It's just weird. And number two, you shouldn't have presidents flying, or it's security risk. Gold-plated walls. It's a horrible look. And, when we say emoluments, what the framers were talking about were bribes, that this is a bribe, if it looks.
Although I just want to interrupt you, because bribed has become a term of art in the federal, criminal code. And even if it weren't a bribe, it would certainly be what the Constitution calls a prize or an emolument or a gift. So it's not, for a bribe, you might have to try to show the exact quid pro quo. We don't need to show it here. We know it's a gift, and we know commonsensically they gave it for some reason. Sorry, go ahead.
It's a good point. And, I just think a lot of people who watch this also are like, the common sense understanding of it. Like, what do you think they're giving it? You think they're giving it because they just like to give him an airplane? So, but you're right. But I think, it is the way it's phrased at a technical level versus its normal parlance. We want to break it down here, be specific. Good point. Everybody hit subscribe. Let's get to 5 million subscribers. But more importantly, subscribe to Harry Litman's Substack, the Talking Feds Substack, his podcast, the Talking Feds podcast, and the Talking Feds YouTube channel. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Ben, and congrats again. It's now on, you can see it stream, the Webby Awards, where the MeidasTouch is the top of the top. So congratulations.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.